All right, so we're here to discuss the Christmas Day games between the Browns and the Packers and the Colts and the Cardinals. Now, these two games were vastly different than each other. The Browns-Packers game was much better than the Colts-Cardinals game. But let's just jump into the first one between the Packers and the Browns. Now, the Packers did end up beating the Browns 24-22. Now, this game, I think the story of most of it can just go down to Baker Mayfield is absolutely terrible. I don't think he's very good. He had 4 interceptions today. Now, obviously, the last one was really iffy. People were really upset about the missed defensive pass interference call, which I completely understand that people being upset that it missed. But this is just how I feel about it. They literally had those 3 passes that Baker Mayfield, 3 interceptions that he had. Maybe if they would have done something with those, especially the one early on when they were deep in the Packers territory and he threw that interception. Before that interception to end the game, the Browns had multiple chances, chance after chance after chance after chance to put the Packers away. Not put them away, but had a chance to score on them, and they just couldn't do it. They couldn't. It felt like in this game they trusted Baker Mayfield more than they trusted their offensive line and Nick Chubb, which it made absolutely no sense why Baker Mayfield was throwing as much as he was. It makes no sense to me. And that's why I don't want to hear about the refs. The Browns had many chances. Baker had many chances to be good in this game, and he just wasn't. He was not good in this game at all. And I can see why Baker's playing for his future contract, to his money contract. And after today, and the way he's been playing this season, some people were even saying that Baker Mayfield is injured. And I'm like, Aaron Rodgers is playing on a broken toe. And he threw 3 touchdown passes in the first half, and Baker Mayfield threw 3 interceptions in the first half. Like, this excuse that Baker Mayfield's injured, I just don't understand it. Everybody's injured at this point, and if it's really that bad, I don't know why Baker Mayfield's playing to begin with. I don't. Like, I get it. You got to respect him toughing it out. But not only did he have the 4 interceptions, but he was missing throws too. It wasn't just the interceptions. The throws that he missed were really brutal. He wasn't very good. So the people saying that the end of the game one is the reason why they lost, I don't see it. He threw 3 of them in the first half. 3 of them. And then it was funny. This one was funny. There was one point where he was just looking at the balls on the sideline, like blaming the footballs that he was being bad. I'm like, no, Baker, you're just really, really bad. Like, his interceptions today they were all on him. A lot of the times it feels like an interception, it could be on, the receiver slipping or something else. No, all of them were on him. There's really no excuse for it. He was really bad on it. And I don't think Baker Mayfield, in my opinion, is very good. And it doesn't help that all 3 of the interceptions that Baker Mayfield threw in the first half led to Packers touchdowns. That doesn't help his case either, because he was gifting them interceptions. And then off of those interceptions, he was gifting them points. So Baker Mayfield was the main reason why. The coaching was bad too, because there was times where the Browns would get a first down running the football with Nick Chubb, who had a massive game. Nick Chubb only had 17 carries, but on those 17 carries, he had 126 yards, a touchdown, and averaged 7.4 yards per carry. So the fact that Nick Chubb didn't get the football more than he did, I understand the Browns were down a lot at some points, but the Packers did nothing in the second half. I think they scored 3 total points in the second half. The Packers' run defense was absolutely abysmal. It was atrocious against the Browns. They could not stop Nick Chubb to save their lives. So the fact that in that game, even when they were down, they kept letting Baker Mayfield throw, it made no sense to me. Just continue to run the ball with Nick Chubb, continue to run it down their throats, and make them stop you, because they've proven they couldn't stop you at all. The Browns' run game could not be stopped with Nick Chubb. So the coaching decisions, like, they would get a first down, and then on the next play, they would run a pass play, and I'm just like, why? There was points in this game I'm just simply thinking, why are you throwing the football? Why? There was no reason at points in this game to throw the football whatsoever with Baker Mayfield. None. The run game was really good. They were able to just push the Packers' run defense out of the way, like over 200 yards or something crazy of total rushing yards that the Packers' defense gave up in this game. The Packers' rush defense was it was gross. It was disgusting. It was not good. So just the fact that they gave up 219 total yards. that will lose them a playoff game too. Like the Packers defense, their pass defense was great in this game. But I mean, it doesn't help. Baker was throwing terrible balls, 4 interceptions, missing his receivers, just missing, and he was bad. Just his accuracy was just abysmally bad in this game. But like their pass defense was good. 5 sacks. Rasul Douglas, ever since he came from Arizona, which the fact that Rasul Douglas was on the Arizona's practice squad, and he had 2 interceptions tonight. The team as a total had 4. So the fact that he was on a practice squad earlier on in the season, and the Cardinals, we'll get to them, the Cardinals season is just in complete shambles right now. They are free falling so hard right now. They are not playing well at all. So we'll get to their game in a little bit. But just the fact that he was on somebody's practice squad, and he's coming out here, and he's replacing Alexander, who is one of the best cornerbacks in football, and replacing him and doing it at an elite level too. That's just a crime. It's a literal crime that the fact that Rasul Douglas was on somebody's practice squad at one point this season. It makes no sense to me. It doesn't. There's a guy that much talent, and the guy wasn't playing on the Cardinals. And ever since the Cardinals let him go, the Cardinals season has been free falling, and the Packers just seem to ascend more and more. Now, again, their run defense, that's going to cost them in the playoffs. I wholeheartedly think that it will, especially if they get matched up with like a Rams team or a 49ers team. That's going to be scary. That's going to be a death sentence for them, because Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, those offensive geniuses are going to be like, well, they can't stop the run. Fine, we're going to design the run specifically around this terrible run defense of the Packers and just run it down their throats the entire time. But just the Packers defense as a whole was just the run defense was bad. Baker Mayfield was bad. Now the Packers offense, again, and this is where stats come in, and people love to throw quarterback stats. I don't buy completely on stats. I buy of what I see on my eyes. Baker Mayfield had, I think, the better stats in this game. I don't care. Baker Mayfield played terribly. Aaron Rodgers didn't have flashy numbers. He barely threw for over 200 yards. I think he had 202 yards. And I think he had 3 touchdowns in the first half. And it's like, that's not flashy. I'm like, but the way you see him do it, the way you see the Packers offense runs, their offense is very efficient. Now in the second half, I don't know what they were doing. Because in my opinion, and again, these are all my opinions, the Packers late in that second half, they were running the ball, trying to run out the clock. And I was thinking the opposite. I'm like, you have Aaron Rodgers just continue to throw the football, try to get into field goal range. Like Aaron Rodgers broke the single season or the franchise record for most touchdown passes for that organization, passing Brett Favre. And when they put up the graphic, he had so many fewer interceptions. So I'm like, turning the ball over is not the problem. He can throw the football. Why aren't they throwing it with him? Obviously, I think Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon are a much better combo than like Zeke Elliott and Tony Pollard. I think those two are much, much better. I just think you have Aaron Jones, who can do everything, come out of the backfield, run the ball. And you have A.J. Dillon, just his power to run down the field, and just his ability to move an entire pile is just absolutely insane. So I think those two combos are just much better. But I'm also thinking, I'm like, pass the ball a little bit more, because I think they had a couple 3-and-outs, and they gave him like, 10 yards maybe, if that. So I thought that was a little bit weird. The second half offense of the Packers I was not a fan of, did not really like it. I wish they would have went for the throats and actually closed that game out. But I don't know. I have written down here in my notes that I'm not really impressed with either one of these teams. Now, obviously, the Browns, they lost to the Raiders on Tuesday, and then they lose to the Packers today. The Browns are a bad team. They are literally a quarterback away, I think, from being good. I really do. They have too much talent. That defense is way too good. The team as a whole is way too good. Their quarterback is holding them back. They really, really are. But the Packers, their defense gave up too many yards. Their offense was slow in the second half. The Browns didn't use Nick Chubb enough. And then you have Baker throwing 4 interceptions. So just those things alone just didn't impress me enough, from either one of these teams. You kind of expect it from the Packers. You almost expect a little bit more. But it's just weird. Once the Packers hit that 24-point threshold, mark in a game, they don't do anything else. It just feels like 24 is the magic number for the Packers, and they can win. Now, obviously, there was a couple bad ref issues in this game. I think there was a challenge by the Packers where they called it incomplete. The Packers challenged it. Matt LaFleur challenged it. It obviously looked complete to everybody, and then they still called it incomplete after review. Makes no sense. And then the obvious pass interference at the end of the game. I get that. For me personally, I think the Browns had way too many chances, especially for how bad that the Packers offense was playing in the second half, that they could have done something else and they just didn't. And then throwing 3 interceptions, it hinders the team. I think that people saying that the refs cost the Browns the game, I just think like you had 3 opportunities, if not more, earlier on in the game to do something, and you didn't do anything with it. So I don't blame the referees for this loss. I blame Baker Mayfield throwing 3 interceptions in the first half on this loss. And then on the second Christmas Day game, you had the Indianapolis Colts defeating the Arizona Cardinals 22-16. Now this game, I did not like this game at all. This game was a struggle to get through at times in this game. I am not going to lie. Now, we look at the Cardinals side of the ball. They are really, really struggling right now. The Cardinals, they started off hot, and then I believe they're 3-5 or something like that. They started off 7-0. Now they're 10-5. And they're not even in the first place in their division right now. Like, the Cardinals do not look like a good football team. Now, some people might say that DeAndre Hopkins is out, and I think that's a massive freaking loss for the Cardinals because I think he's one of the best receivers in the NFL. But the Cardinals have lost 3 in a row. They've lost their division lead, and I still think they have enough talent. That defense is very good. Like, we can't underestimate that defense. Like, the offense was putting that team in a bad situation the entire game because you had the Cardinals gave up a safety, and then they gave up a field goal. I know that's only 5 points there, but the way this game was going, 5 points was huge in this game, and it turned out to be almost enough because there was neither team, in my opinion, was doing much in this game. I didn't like. Now, to be fair to the Colts, which we'll get to in a second, they had a whole bunch of injuries, but that's kind of a bad look for the Cardinals because the Colts were missing a whole bunch of offensive linemen. The Colts were missing most of their elite defensive or a couple of their elite defensive players, and playing with a makeshift offensive line and a defense that is comprised of a few backups. And the Cardinals literally couldn't do anything. I thought Kyler Murray looked absolutely terrible. I think he made one play the entire night. I really do. It was like a 50-something odd yard run that Kyler Murray had. Other than that, I think that's it. And I think the Cardinals at this point, I think they're frauds. I really, really do. They're not even in first place in their own division right now. They lost to the Packers earlier this year. And then ever since then, they've lost to the Panthers. Then they lost to the Rams. And then they lost to the Lions last week. And then they lost to the Colts now. They are not. They're not. At this point, I don't think they're going to win the division. I think that's up to the Rams at this point. And Kyler Murray had a lot of MVP talk at the beginning of the season. That's obviously completely gone. Like, the Cardinals are just fighting to win their division now. Like, they had a solid lead in their division just a month ago, or close to a month ago. But yeah, a month ago they had a solid lead in their division. That's gone. They're fighting for that. I just don't think that Kyler Murray is playing particularly well right now. I don't think Cliff Kingsbury's putting that team in a very good situation coaching-wise. I think the Cardinals are in a lot of trouble because they still have the Cowboys and the Seahawks to play. The Cowboys, their defense is very good, so that's going to be a struggle of a game for the Cardinals. And then the Seahawks, that's a divisional game with Seahawks and Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll might be their last game together, and those two want to go out with a bang, even if they're not going to make the playoffs. So they're going to play spoiler to the Cardinals season, and they might lose their division. I mean, they're going to make the playoffs. They're on a losing streak, but the Cardinals, I think, can lose out and still make the division just because it's so top heavy, like we say a lot in the NFC. But the Cardinals are frauds. They're really bad. They couldn't move the ball particularly well. Kyler Murray had the intentional grounding for a safety. Their field goal kicking was an absolute joke. They missed 2 field goals. One of them was doinked when they really needed it. I think they missed an extra point. They had a whole bunch of penalties on the offense. The offensive penalties kept moving them backwards. They had a turnover on downs early on in this game. So the Cardinals, just as a whole, I just don't think the Cardinals are a very good team right now. The Colts, on the other hand, I think they're a good team. They're a really good team, and their team runs completely through Jonathan Taylor. 27 carries, 108 yards. Like, this team, and I think the stats showed that anytime Jonathan Taylor runs over 100 yards, the Colts are undefeated, and anytime he's under 100 yards, they lose every game. So this team literally runs through Jonathan Taylor. Like, the stats show it when it comes to his yardage, to the wins, to the success of this team. And I think, just as a whole, I think the team, with what they had to deal with, they had Darius Leonard, who was out. Quentin Nelson didn't play. Like, their offensive line was completely makeshift this entire game. One of their best defensive players, Darius Leonard, was out. Like, he didn't, and they didn't feel like they probably could have played a little bit better because the offensive line definitely wasn't the best. But what do you expect from a makeshift offensive line? Like, they came in, they did their job, they got this win, and now the Colts are still fighting to win their division. So the Colts are in a really good spot still, even after, or just as a whole in this season. They started off this season very poorly, and then they've just rallied and won like 8 of their last however many. Like, the Colts have been a very good team recently. My only issue is with Carson Wentz, because I don't think the Colts can win a playoff game with Carson Wentz as their quarterback. I just don't. He was 18 of 28, 225 yards and 2 touchdowns. I'm like, this is where the stats don't really mean anything, in my opinion. Yeah, the 2 touchdowns are great. That drive late in that game, Carson Wentz looked absolutely elite. He looked awesome on that drive. He was dropping dimes. He was looking good. And then that throw for the touchdown late in the game looked amazing. But just, he had 225 yards, but it felt like a workload to get that. Like, he had to try so hard. He was missing his receivers multiple times. I think the Colts even had a few turnover on downs and everything else. Like, the Colts, man, they're a good football team. I don't like Carson Wentz. I don't trust him in the playoffs. I don't. They're a good team. They're a dangerous team. Defense, great. Offensive line, great. Running back, great. Their quarterback, the one question mark that I feel like if the Colts make it deep into the playoffs will cost them at some point. I really do. Because I feel like Carson Wentz is the most up and down quarterback of this entire season. And I think Carson Wentz has potential to be great. I really do. But he's so inconsistent. He misses throws. If it wasn't for a penalty, there would have been a sack fumble that he would have given up. So Carson Wentz is just, he just has to play a little bit better. I don't think he's terrible, but I don't trust him in the playoffs. Now, if I had to choose between him and Baker from earlier, I would choose Carson Wentz, because I think Carson Wentz, he's shown potential to be good, whereas I don't think Carson Wentz has shown up in big moments and played well, like tonight, whereas Baker Mayfield had a chance to show up in big moments, and he didn't. He threw 3 interceptions. Carson Wentz may have struggled to get his 225 yards passing, but he still had 2 touchdowns and didn't throw in any interceptions. Would have had a fumble if it wasn't for a penalty negated. But just as a whole, I think the Colts as a team, they're going to be scary when it comes to playoff time, just because their fact that they're able to run the ball so well. They ran the ball well against the Patriots. They ran the ball well again tonight. So if we get into situations like we did with the Bills and the Patriots, where no one's able to run or throw the football because the weather conditions are so bad, I think that favors the Colts in many, many ways. Now, if it's in a situation where Carson Wentz has to throw, I don't trust him at all. But they do finish off with the Raiders and the Jaguars, so I think they're in a good spot. I think this playoff race is going to be a lot of fun to watch. I mean, as a whole, some of these teams are set, but I also believe that anything could happen, and we could have a team sneak their way in just because of how crazy the season has been. But that is my review of Christmas Day football. Give me your thoughts down below what you thought, and I will see you in the next one.